Okay, so welcome everyone. We are doing a fantastic video on the Nomads today. We've got Medicraze with us, who
Hello.
will help us talk about the faction a little bit. And the purpose of this video is just to go through all the units and give you a kind of overview of which ones are unique, which ones are pretty similar to the other factions, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and so by the end of this video you'll know all you need to abuse this faction there and back again. Right? So let's just begin with the ACU probably, who is this guy over here, and we've got some upgrades on them which are different from the other factions. So let's just start with what isn't different. If we look at the rightmost ACU, we've got on the right arm Tech 2 and Tech 3. That's pretty much identical to the other factions, and that's pretty much it. All the other upgrades have their own little twists on them. So starting with the left arm, we've got the gun upgrade on our ACU. If we force fire with it, we can see that the upgraded ACU is actually any faster at firing than another upgraded ACU. And the reason that the first gun upgrade, what it does is it adds range and it adds area of effect rather than damage. So you can damage more units at the same time, but you can't actually increase your DPS. If you do want your DPS to go up, however, what you need to do is you get the advanced gun upgrade, and all it does is it adds a second barrel, which, as you might expect, just makes the gun twice as good. So that's pretty simple. The upgraded gun is high damage and with area of effect, whereas the normal gun is an area of effect damage. Another thing that's interesting is that the ACU has a TML upgrade, but unlike the other factions, it's a orbital bombardment upgrade. So let's just launch a strike over here, and you can see that the missiles come from the orbital frigate, which follow the ACU around and they blow up.
Commander
like this.
under attack.
Uh-oh.
No, don't worry, don't pause it. We could see a great demonstration of what happens.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. Someone's calling me.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a failed showcase of the double gun upgrade.
Nah, no
The
worries.
double
What
barrel.
we can do is we can teleport into the middle,
Commander
and
under
you can
attack.
see that
Yeah, that's what I was
it
planning
has
to
a
do.
quite large area of effect, and is able
Right.
to take out the Queen First. Now at this point what's interesting to note is if we look at the ACU, which we've just teleported back, and we look at its regenning at 5 HP a second, which is lower than the other ACUs, whereas if you look at these
Very low.
guys who haven't been fighting, they're regenning at 20 HP a second, and you might ask, well, what's going on? So let's just speed up the game a little bit till the bonus kicks in. Now that ACU is in its rapid repair mode, which is a kind of passive on the Nomads ACU, when it's in combat, it drops its regen to that which is lower than the other ACUs, and after a couple of minutes, it starts repairing itself if it hasn't fired its weapon and it hasn't taken any damage. So that means, as a Nomads player, you want to attack, do some crazy stuff, and then retreat and heal back up, and you'll have an advantage over the other players. And when you're playing against Nomads, what you want to do is you want to harass the ACU so that he gets the bonus removed. So for instance, if we fire the weapon, you can see that the
Drops back down.
the regens drop back to 5 a second, and the effect has disappeared. This repair effect is only visible when a unit is at low HP and it's repairing itself, and this is actually true of all, not all Nomads buildings, but a fair amount of them. So if we get this P-Gem, right now it's got plus 0 HP a second, and then we'll put it back and it will have repaired itself by the time we get back to it. There we go. And you can see that the other P-Gens likewise have a little bit of regen on them, but that regen will disappear as soon as they take any damage. Right, and then back to the auto bombardment upgrade, we have also the advanced auto bombardment, and it's a little bit like the UEF Billy in that it costs a little bit more, and when you launch it, let's just build ourselves a missile, it does a lot more damage, but as Nomads have this unique feature to them, instead it just launches a lot more missiles. So the normal bombardment launches 2, whereas this one launches 4, and each missile deals a couple of thousand damage, so it's less than a TML, and it's not very precise, but because there's a lot more of them, and it's dealing damage over an area, it's very effective against units.
Right, and I would assume you would have to, this would be quite advantageous to a turtling player, I would assume, on their main base or whatever.
Well, it's like a TML upgrade, you know, you can do your ACU drop in the enemy base. It's not as effective because it takes a little bit of a while, so it's more effective on longer range than a shorter range, because with a normal ACU the TML is right there. And you can snipe other ACUs with it, you can snipe mexes with it, but this guy is really good against armies and blowing up PGens and stuff like that. It's almost like a T3 artillery strike, but one-off. So next we'll actually skip this upgrade, which is top secret, and leave that one to last. We have the emergency repair system, and this is a survivability upgrade for the ACU. Essentially what it does is it really boosts the rapid repair bonus on it. So you can see it's got 100.
Would you compare that to something like a nano upgrade?
Yeah, it's something like a nano upgrade. However, you can see that when it's taken a little bit of damage, the ACU is just at 20 HP a second, which is up from 5, but it's still a very low amount. And when it hasn't taken damage, it's at 120 HP a second. So this nano is very conditional, so it adds a little bit of HP to the ACU.
So the difference between the Nomad survivability upgrade, if you will, and other factions would be the cost of energy, because this essentially behaves like a shield upgrade, but doesn't cost you energy?
Yeah, it's a similar... It's a mix between the shield and nano, right? So it adds regen rather than HP, and rather than costing energy, it doesn't need that. And likewise, we've got the advanced version of it, which is autonomous repair system, which gives it even more HP and further upgrade to its base regen as well as its boosted regen. And next we have somewhere over here an ACU where we can get the locomotor upgrade, and what this is pretty simple. All it does is it makes the ACU go faster. And so let's have a race, and you can see that this guy is just flying ahead. And what that means is if you have an ACU with locomotor, you can escape T3 units, whereas without locomotor you can't. And likewise, if you're chasing down an ACU with this, there's no way they can get away, but you could get away even if they have gun and you don't. So it's a fairly aggressive upgrade, very good with gun, and something like the repair systems. So you can combo those two, you can run in, do a crazy load of damage and run out. You can take much bigger risks than a normal AC would be able to, because you can't really get surrounded as easily.
Yeah, this would kind of negate the whole the Aeon longer gun, if you will, because you'd be able to escape that. Yeah,
so you really do have an advantage if you're willing to pay the extra upgrade for it. And of course, Nomads at RAS is also a little bit different. So the way this works is that it's an upgrade on the back, and there's currently in the balance a bit of a let's call it a spectrum of RAS efficiency. So some RASes gives you more energy and less mass per second, and others gives you more mass and less energy per second. Well, this one just decides to do both, so it adds a special toggle, and you can see that it's got plus 20 and plus 400 when you turn that off. It reduces its mass income and increases its energy income. So you can actually balance your eco like this, and in a sense this might make it the best race, but it's slightly less efficient than the other factions, so there we go.
And where is the toggle?
Oh, it's in the bottom left corner if you select
Bottom
that.
left.
Yeah, next to the O charge button. So by default it gives you more mass, and then if you toggle it, it gives you more energy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
There you go. Alright, now for the best upgrade in the game, of course, and the most interesting upgrade. It's called the capacitor upgrade. So the way this works is it adds a battery, and you can see that the ACU's just started charging up. What it does is it drains a lot of energy. It drains about 500 per second while it's charging, and it takes a little bit of time to charge up, and you can see these flashing red lights and these energy storages which are integrated into the ACU shoulders are showing what level the capacitor is at. So we're almost there now.
Oh, that's funny. What an amazing level of detail.
Yeah, we loved it.
Boost ready.
There we go.
And now it's flashing green because it's
Has to
full.
boost ready. Yeah, the computer even announced something. So there we go, it's ready. And what does it do? Well, it makes everything better. It gives you more build power, more regeneration, more speed, and everything else as well. And you can have fries with that too. So let's toggle our capacitor on. You can see that he's started shooting faster. It's got these blue police lights on there. That's the sound of the police. And
absolutely brutal.
And it's got a bit of area of effect damage on it. And it stacks with pretty much every upgrade you have. So if you have a gun upgrade, it adds even more range. If you have
right.
T3 upgrade, it adds more build power.
Would this also reduce the overcharge time, or is that left alone? I would assume that
time
if it
is left alone. It's scary
okay,
enough.
Good. Right.
Yeah. So
right, that seems like a very inexpensive upgrade, given the benefit you get. But then again, you would have to build an extra T2P gen if you were trying to push for it.
Yeah, you need to add more things to it, and
right.
likewise, if you want to stall the enemy opponent, they could cancel their their RAS charging sequence, and then their energy is basically lost.
Capacitor boost ready.
And likewise, you can have the auto capacitor toggle on it. So if you right-click the button, it will automatically charge after it's discharged. But to activate it, you have to activate it manually because you don't want to activate it all the time.
Exactly.
Right, and the next upgrade, and the last upgrade, is the Intel probe. So let's just get that. And then what you may have noticed is that on the top here, there's an ability bar which is added in Nomads. And this is a purely UI feature. It doesn't actually do anything that you can't do normally, but it has a few interesting things, like you can launch your missiles and things like that from like the ability bar rather than having to select a unit. So if you've got a TML launcher somewhere on the map, you can just select this. It will show you where your TML launchers are, and it will launch from the nearest TML launcher and things like that. It's pretty fancy.
And which ACU is this?
We're just looking at the third ACU, but the ability panel exists for all units. Anyway, so what we'll
Intel probe, got it.
Is we'll have the Intel probe, and what you do is you select an area to probe, and the orbital frigate assigned to this commander. So we've got a few frigates here, and that's because we've got a lot of ACUs. We'll launch this thing. And the way it works is when it lands, it creates a little bit of intel. That's all it does. It's very simple, but it's a free kind of scout. You can shoot it down with TMD. So on the early stages, it's pretty useful. And what we'll do is we'll just speed up the game to get the reload bar. So you can't speed up the reload of this. And let's launch a second probe. That works. Oh no, we've discovered a bug. you don't have the Intel probe loaded when you get the upgrade. The advanced probe, it doesn't like it. Oh well, there we go, here's the second one, and this one provides vision and omni and a bit more radar. So
Okay.
it's pretty simple
So
stuff.
it's kind of like the Aeon Eye.
Yeah, it's an kind of an intelligence upgrade for the Nomads. So if you want to have a quick, cheap scout, which you don't need to worry about, you don't need an air factory for. Although T1 scouts you can get.
Now,
anyway.
I would assume the enemy is unable to kill the probe before it lands.
You can shoot down the probe with tactical missile defenses. So on the early stages, if you don't have them, then you can't shoot down any probes. But once the probe's landed and it's done, like you get the intel. Right, so now let's just move on to T1 lab. So we've got some pretty simple stuff here. We've got the T1 Scout, and you'll notice that some of these models are new, whereas some of these models are old. What we're currently going under is an overhaul for graphics, whereas most of the T1 units are looking pretty shiny right now. So we've got our T1 tank, which is a pretty typical T1 tank, nothing too special there. It's got most DPS and least HP out of all the tanks. It's pretty fast, it's the second fastest tank in the game after the Mantis, and in general nothing really too extraordinary about it. T1 Scout is the same thing. Right now it's got a short range weapon with a almighty 4 damage on it. So this is the strongest weapon on a scout in the whole game. So I guess.
So brutal.
So
OP.
brutal. Unstoppable scout spam. Yeah, we're probably going to remove the weapon in the future patch, by the way. Right. And then we have...
Now, can those shoot out of a transport?
Scouts? No, because we've got...
Would they behave kind of like a lab or anything?
No, we've got the T1 Lab, or the T1 Lab, which is the light assault vehicle. We don't have any bots on Nomads, they don't like legs. And this one is unique in that it can move around over the water. So rather than having hover RT or hover tanks, we've got a hover light assault vehicle. So it's faster than an Aurora, but if it beats an Aurora, you kind of get a really predictable result. And likewise with the T1 artillery, it costs less than the T1 artillery, but doesn't really have the DPS. It's got the DPS of the lab. There we go. And I think this is one of the cutest units in the game. There we go.
It is rather cute. Now, is that the new model?
That is the new model, yeah.
Sexy.
Yeah. And another thing actually that's worth checking out here is that if we just really quickly go to let's go to Medicraze for a minute, and we can spawn a lab for him. T1 lab, Nomads, that's assault vehicle. You'll notice that the colour of the hover effect is different for Medicraze than it is for me, and this is a Nomad developed code, so we can now
genius level programming
support effects for the team colour, and you can even see that its bullets have slightly changed colour as well. There's mine are orange.
Amazing.
Here's a white. That's what we do. We do the impossible. Right, and now we have the artillery, which you may notice have a weird strategic icon on it. That's because we don't have an anti-air. Why don't we have an anti-air? Because the Nomad T1 artillery is the anti-air. It fires missiles, and it works like a mobile missile launcher. It doesn't track its targets at all. So if you move in a straight line, then it can't hit you. So that's a really big disadvantage compared to the other artilleries, which can hit you if you move in a straight line. They force the AC to dodge and things like that. The upside, however, is that the artillery has more HP than all the other artilleries, and while it costs like a lot more, it can also shoot down the air units at the same time, so you always have a defense against air if you have some artillery in your army. Kind of a utility support unit. What's also worth noting is that it's got this anti-air and anti-land toggle, but as you noticed, it had no problem switching to an aircraft as soon as anything happened, even without the toggle. So what does the toggle do? Well, the toggle is to change the priority on the anti-air. See, it does everything for you, and if you were to ground fire, for instance, it would stop shooting the planes and it would start shooting the ground, even though there are planes above it. And that's basically, it lets you control all that you like without getting in the way. And if you need the target dead, you can just click on the target and it won't have any issues with fighting the UI or anything like that. And this just changes the priority, whether it prioritizes land targets by itself or air targets by itself. So, bit of usability there. And then next we have the T1 Tank Destroyer. Now, T1 Tank Destroyer is a very slow unit, it's got a very slow turn rate of fire, and a very low turn rate. But, as you will find out, it's first looking awesome, and second it deals 300 damage per shot, which is enough to one-shot pretty much any T1 land unit. Except for, of course, the UEF Mobile Anti-Air, which has the most HP in the game out of all T1 units, if you didn't know that. So, what's this for? Well, the Nomads don't actually have any good DPS units for land, so the other factions, they have the T1 Artillery, which can deal a lot of DPS to any moving unit, any kind of unit, but the Nomads don't, because they've got the Mobile Anti-Air, which is a mobile missile launcher, so it can't hit moving targets pretty much at all. Whereas this guy can. So this is your high DPS solution. It's got 30 DPS, which isn't that much, but because it's got such a high damage, it lets you actually deal with T2 land a little bit by stacking into these guys rather than stacking into T1 artillery. So you would deal with higher tech units by spamming T1 artillery until you can get T2 land. Well, with Nomads you can get these guys instead. Now you fulfill that role.
Now, I could have sworn that the T1 Tank Destroyer had a toggle similar to the Seraphim T3 sniper bots at one point.
At one point it did, and what that did is it toggled a deployment animation where it became stationary and it got more deviated and things like that. It got removed because it was too micro intensive. What you'd do is you'd toggle.
It really was.
You'd toggle, right? You'd fight, and then every time you want to move, you toggle them back, then you toggle them stationary again. And it's a little bit annoying.
It was. Yeah, so, it really was.
in terms of usability,
good change, good
design. We're actually thinking of adding it back in, or rather, I am. Epophanes, also known as Sirona Daphnelan, is the person in charge of balance for the mod. I'm just the project manager, like the organizer, and I do graphical stuff, right? So he makes the decisions on balance, he's my boss in that sense. And I'm trying to convince him to add the toggle back in, but not as a quick toggle like that, because that would be a disaster, but as a permanent toggle. So you click it, it deploys into a PD, and that's it. It's a completely different decision. So it's much more strategic.
So it would it would just remove its movability.
Oh yeah, it's like a deployment animation, right? And then it's done.
Gotcha.
So it lets you kind of deploy these guys, hold some ground, but after that you're making a permanent commitment, which is a lot more interesting than just spamming the hell out of micro, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the T1 engineer, of course. Where
I'm on the wrong channel. How's it going?
Hola.
Now there we go, we've got surprise people. Clockwork, we are making a cast. Welcome.
You're making a what?
We're making a cast right now, and we're recording it. And you just gate crashed it. How do you feel?
Why are you doing it in the public channel?
Because we can.
Anyways, you're not going to believe this, but through the magic of video editing, we can remove all of that.
Don't worry, it's staying in the uncut version.
Perfect.
Yeah, so what you saw here was the building animation for the Nomad structures. They kind of start building from the bottom up, and look awesome while doing so. Anyway, T2 land. So, unspecial units are the hover tank, which is pretty much a hover tank, a go, it fires in a burst. And then we have the T2 heavy tank, which is basically like an obsidian and pillar. It's just a really strong tank, pretty similar there so far. Same with the T2 flak, nothing special about that. What we do get special is with the mobile missile launcher. I notice it costs 50% more than other missile launchers, and
including the Cybrin? Oh my goodness.
All the missile launchers have the same price, I believe, but
right, I'm trying to remember what kind of benefit this would have. Oh, amphibious. Oh wow.
There's your benefit right there.
Oh my.
And
can it fire from underwater?
From underwater as well.
Oh jeez.
It sounds very scary, but there you go, look at that.
Oh man, that's a cool detail.
If you pay extra attention, you'll notice that the missile unpacks mid-flight. Fins on it.
From, well, let's see if it unpacks when it hits water.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But yeah, and what you'll also notice is that the range on it increases substantially when it's above the water. So when it's under the water,
that makes sense.
It's got a very low range, I believe it's something like half the range or whatever. And basically you can't really just bombard enemy bases against it.
Right.
And since it costs 1.5 times more, a little bit clunky to use than the other ones, because the other ones you could just spam and spam against TMDs, whereas this one's a little bit more fragile.
More difficult.
It's got 600 HP, so a single torpedo bomber can take it out, and a single torpedo bomber is cheaper than this MML. That's how you stop them. But there you go, there's your flexibility. And the next thing we have is the EMP tank, which deals pretty much no damage, but it deals extra damage to shields, so it's like an absolver, and as you may expect, it stuns enemy units on a pretty long range. So what you do is, this is a support unit, rather than having a mobile shield, we've got a mobile shield destroyer.
And does the EMP have an area of effect?
Yep, the EMP
for enemy units. Wonderful.
That does have an area of effect. It's got a mighty 5 damage per shot though. Against shields it's a lot more, so you can use this.
Well, that's not what you would use it.
Shield ACU.
Do you happen to know? Do you happen to know what the AOE is on that?
Now we can find out.
Oh, that's okay. I'll add those numbers after it.
So it's done.
Man, I am so lethargic right now.
So, and another thing that we've added in Nomads is actually a darkening effect to the EMP. When a structure
darkening effect?
Yeah, when a structure gets stunned.
Oh, I see it. Okay, got it.
It's got a new visual effect. Probably just fire out the structure rather than trying to be too fancy about it. Come on then. So you can see that it just has a little bit of visual feedback to show that actually your building's not working.
Right. God, that needs to be implemented on like the Absolver. Just basically everything.
Well, it's an effect that is true for all units. So it's an effect that is true for all units that get stunned. So this is Nomad's improvement. PRs, you can make your PRs now to the main repo. Right, if it gets signed off by management. Alright, but that is your support unit for both T2 and T3, because EMP is quite useful in the T3 stage as well, as we will see. And the next thing the Nomads have is a field engineer, so a bit like the Sparky, but better of course. Instead of a gun, it has tactical missile defense. So here's your mobile tactical missile defense. First of its kind. It's not very good, but it's better than nothing.
I'm straight up trying to find. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, and it can do all the things that normal combat engineers.
So it's just it's TMD. It's nothing like the Loyalist where it returns it.
No. Just TMD.
Cool.
So we can actually do is spawn a few of them over here, and then we'll spawn
that's what I was about to do.
Spawn. as a launcher. So, you can see the missiles coming in, and they should. Failed to shoot it down, there we go. They did take a couple of shots though.
So you just grabbed the UEF TMD and slapped it on there, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, is it really?
No, it's not good.
I was about to say.
Yeah, there you go. As you can see,
I do remember back in the day the UEF TMD had a hard time shooting them down.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's not very good, but
yeah, that's not their
in a
primary
pinch,
function.
it can save you. Yeah, there you go. Anyway,
so I guess just assist your ACU with a couple of those, and should help out with.
And hope for the best. Yeah, I wouldn't count on it though.
That's better than nothing.
It is better than nothing. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
wonder what their cost is. Let's see.
They cost 200 mass each, so they cost about as much as TMD.
Oh, okay.
So you probably don't want them.
Nope. I'd rather use a TMD.
Yeah. It's definitely not some kind of super TMD alternative.
Right.
Right, now we got a T3 unit, so we've got a T3 hover tank. It's got missiles and a cannon. Pretty straightforward. We're actually going to
and a cannon.
replace it with an amphibious tank because Phyllis proved that this thing is pretty much unbalanceable. Because if you consider if you consider the naval game, and you have a hover tank, it's basically competing with the role of a frigate. And either it's worse than a frigate, in which case it doesn't make a very good tank on the T3 land stage, or it's better than the frigate, in which case you can just roll over pretty much any navy.
Right. Since they're so tiny, you'd be able to dodge pretty much anything.
And you know, even if they're slower on the water, which they are now, it's just a total pain to balance. You pretty much can't do it. So T3 heavy tank fires a massive shot, 1,600 damage, just like the Percival. Very, very strong.
Epic.
What's even better is that it's got area of effect on its cannon, which is the only T3 land unit I think to do so. Which means that with the EMP tank, it's got a great combo. You stun some units, you bunch them up, this guy wrecks them. However, it's got pretty short range. Well, not that short, and pretty low HP as well. So it loses to other T3 land units. But if you use the AoE effect on it, damage goes way up. So the Nomads are, as a faction, kind of like glass cannons in a sense.
X that. I was trying to spawn a Percival. Jesus.
And we got the T3 mobile artillery, which is pretty similar to the other artilleries. It's got a larger minimum range compared to the others. However, it can shoot while moving, a bit like the Aeon artillery. There we go, Percival. If he starts shooting.
Oh, I disabled his shooting.
There we go.
But yeah, I believe
he would. Yeah, he would handily Shrek the tank. However, you've got the EMP on it, and you've got a couple of other guys on there.
Yeah, that's true.
Get some T2 spam to get rid of them. There we go. Right, that's land pretty much done. Here's the mobile anti-air, which is not really special in any way. But interestingly, it used to be special. This is the first mobile anti-air on the T3 stage to be ever made. Then Fab put the other ones in the other 4 factions. That's quite interesting. And another piece of history is that T3 hover tank was made in... Yep.
So for those who are giving Nomads crap, but love the way FAF does things, you have Nomads to thank.
Yeah. They literally invented. So the day the T3 mobile anti-air was added to the game, the Nomads developers made the T3 hover tank. And because before that it wasn't there, since they had the special unit for that. And this was done in one day. It was made in one day, textured, everything. You can see that
Jeez.
sometimes you can do things really quickly, but it doesn't quite look as good as some of the other new units. Which is why it's taken us.
No, I can definitely see the difference.
Yeah.
But in a pinch, it'll do because most people don't, you know, zoom in all the way down unless they're doing stuff like I do.
Which is why Nomads is completely functional today. So you can play it right now. It's balanced. It works. And what we're doing is we're just refactoring, dressing it up, and all that stuff. So let's move on to the air units. A lot of it's pretty simple. So interceptor, just like any other interceptor. The scout, just like any other scout, because it's got this awesome unpacking animation when it takes off. But aside from that, identical to other scouts. The Nomads do field a T1 gunship, which is very similar to the Jester. The only difference is it fires in a burst rather than continuously. So,
does it have... Okay, so it has a stronger alpha, if you will. And does it still have... Oh, you'll get to it, whatever. The torpedoes.
No, it doesn't have any torpedoes. No, that's a different gunship, don't worry. We've got special things coming. So,
oh yeah, that's why I shut up. Anyway, go ahead.
A little bit more HP and a little bit less damage. But otherwise, very similar to the Jester. So then we got the T1 bomber. T1 bomber is pretty similar, but also not. So unlike other bombers, it shoots missiles. So the missiles are fairly slow, and you can still dodge them with engineers, but they're a little bit more consistent. And it is essentially T1 Corsair, which is, as we all know, the best bomber, which makes this the best T1
obviously. Do they drop a little later? It seems like they make their drops later.
Well,
oh no, never mind.
The bombs land at the same time, pretty much. So when the bomber is over the target, the bombs land. But if you were to, let's say, fire and stop the bomber, the bombs would continue moving, and you can kind of hover bomb. Actually, no, you can't.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
There we go. It works a little bit.
Works a little bit. I believe that's the anti-hover bombing code coming in and ruining all our plans. Yeah. So, and then T1 transport is, let's say, unique. So the other transports can all carry 6 units, but our transport can only carry 4. As a result, though, it's a lot cheaper, so the Nomads have a quantity over quality approach here. And there you go, it's kind of like this flying sort of thing.
And they cost the same as the other factions and everything?
It's a little bit cheaper.
Okay, I didn't bother looking
for it. So if you're dropping in a single NG or into a secure location, you might get around faster.
Now this looks like an older model, as you can tell.
That is an older model. Most of our models are old. You will see that way.
Oh, you can definitely tell when it's a newer model. It looks really good.
So, T2, special things incoming. Right, so you got the T2 torpedo gunship, of course. Rather than a normal gunship, it actually fires missiles, and these missiles can be used against land targets, they can be used against water targets, and they can be used against submarines. So, whenever the missiles fall into the water, they get turned into torpedoes. It's just like magic. This gunship is the torpedo bomber as well, so if you're chasing an ACU, there's no way he can get away.
Here you go. Did you want to demonstrate the torpedo on this little guy here?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Look at him getting smashed.
Look at that.
So,
absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, so he has more DPS than a torpedo bomber, but unlike a torpedo bomber, he doesn't have any alpha damage, and you have to fly right into the cruiser to get them. So they're actually a little bit weaker against anti-air defenses, but if there are no anti-air defenses, then they can just mop the floor with everyone. And they of course provide the added flexibility on maps when you have both land and air units. You can just crash everything, you can kill the Nexus, you can kill the submarines, kill the engineers, everything. So yeah, there we go. They do need a lot bit more time to fly into the enemy, though, compared to torpedo bombers. So strictly against cruisers and things, are not as good as sniping them. Right. So next unit is the T2 Corsair, of course. Working a bit like the T1 bomber. This is the T2 fighter bomber, and in this case, it really is a T2 fighter bomber. So you may know that the Corsair has 1,200 damage. And basically no anti-air capabilities. This guy has pretty good anti-air capabilities, same as the other factions, but it's cheaper. However, it does a lot less damage on the ground, so it's a lot more air focused
600.
and a lot less air and a lot less land focused. So less of a sniping tool, more of a swift wind with benefits. Let's call it that. That's pretty much it. So you can't snipe with them as well, but you can use them better because they're cheaper. And then the T2 transport, nothing too special about that one. It can hold, I believe, 10 units, and the only difference with it is it's the only unarmed transport in the game, I suppose. T2. But the other transports aren't really that scary in ground damage, so yeah.
Now, is this transport also cheaper than the other ones?
No, it's pretty much, it's just a T2 transport, yeah, nothing special.
Okay.
And not really that much special on the T3 stage either. We've got T3 gunship, T3 strategic bomber, scout, ASF. So ASF and scout, they're the same. The only cool thing about the ASF, or the best thing about the ASF, is that they have these wings and they can unpack. They have animations on those wings, so when they enter combat, you'll see them move their wings around and maneuver a little bit more. But that's just visuals. You can see they're pretty much identical to the other ASFs. And then the strategic bomber has very high area of effect and a very low damage. I believe it might be the lowest damage bomber in the game, even less than the Cybran, not by much. But it does this kind of area of effect thing. You can see that the ASF has changed its wing configurations, a bit of a subtle change, but you can see that it's kind of turned into this flying squid thing.
That's really cool. There's a lot of hidden detail in here, guys. Y'all should take a look at the Nomads.
Yeah, and then it just packs up again after that. There we go. So that's the air unit. Let's just quickly go through the Navy. So T1 Navy, nothing too special here. Standard frigate, standard sub. The submarine doesn't have a deck gun, and that's basically the only difference. Frigate, just a frigate. It's got pretty low HP and pretty high DPS. Aside from that, it's just following the Nomads faction of low HP, more DACA. Interestingly, we are planning on changing this. So,
changing the health and output.
We are changing the T1 Navy. So the T1 Navy on the Nomad is going to get a new unit. It's one of the very few units we are planning to add. We're only planning to add 2, which is the T1 artillery boat, and that one will have the artillery and anti-air weapon of the mobile artillery. And the frigate will have its anti-air removed and replaced with TMD. So it will be a little bit like the field engineer.
Interesting.
And
so you got a little mix of Aeon disadvantages and other advantages. That's cool.
So it will be a slightly different navy because of that. So you'll have a frigate which doesn't have any anti-air defenses on its own, so you'll need to build a separate unit for it. And the separate unit will be less efficient than the Aeon anti-air boat, but it will also have this artillery bonus, which I feel personally is the most valuable thing ever, because other frigates, they always have trouble hitting the ground, whereas this thing will not have trouble hitting the ground.
Right. Yeah.
So sniping
that would
the mechs
be very
is
helpful if
be scared of the cliffs.
Exactly, I was just about to bring that up, because there are some ladder maps that would absolutely get demolished by this frigate after the changes.
Yeah. Not the frigate, the artillery boat. Frigate's gonna be funny.
Right, the artillery boat.
Yeah. And then on the T2 stage, we've got a T2 torpedo boat, pretty much similar to the UEF. This is the boat that has the TMD on it, because you'll notice that the cruiser does not have TMD on it. So beware of that.
Good to know.
And T2 destroyer, it's got more range, so it's got 80 range, just like the Cybern and Aeon destroyers, and it's got 2 cannons, no anti-air, and some torpedoes. So nothing too special here, apart from the fact that we do need to change the model on it so that it can't shoot backwards, which is interestingly a pretty big balance blunder.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about how many Cybern naval battles you weren't aware you won because they weren't able to shoot backwards.
Exactly. So this is the only destroyer which has 80 range and can shoot backwards. The destroyers which have 60 range, so the UEF and Seraphim, they have 2 guns, one in the front and the back. This one has 2 guns, one in the front and back, but it's got 80 range, so this one can kite the other 2. We can't have that. So that's what we'll be replacing the model in due time, which will be much more beautiful and it's coming along. So you'll be able to see that maybe on Medicraze's screen when he photoshops it in or whatever. And then the cruiser.
Perhaps.
It's got an EMP gun. So
awesome.
There's your EMP tank on the T2 stage. And it's got anti-air. And it has a manual fire TML launcher. This is a fully, full-on TML, just like the stationary tactical missile launcher. It's got a bit of a minimum range, but aside from that, there we go, 6,000 damage, boom, Nexus sniped. So Nomads are, let's call them the artillery faction, low HP, many damages, and here we go. So you can see that bunch of crazy stuff is going on here with Medicraze spawning all sorts of weird wonderful things, with T3 ships shooting at them as well as T3 artillery. So,
oh my goodness, I just noticed.
Onto the T3 Navy. So, battleship, it's got no rear guns, but aside from that, it's a full-on attack mode battleship. So, because it's got no rear guns, it doesn't need to shoot something, it doesn't need to turn sideways to shoot. So when chasing somebody, 100% of the DPS goes in their face.
Brutal.
Likewise, when being chased, 0% of the DPS goes to them. So as someone famous once said, not a step backwards. Right? And then we got the tactical missile submarine. The tactical missile submarine. Why isn't it the strategic missile submarine? Well, it can't launch nukes. There we go. It's cheaper than the others, and it's got really good torpedoes, and it's got tactical missiles. Well, that's pretty much what it does in the tin. Why doesn't it have an ability to launch nukes? Well, we actually have the crawler. We're going to pinch that from the experimental stage, and this is our mobile missile launcher for the Nomads. It's the T4 artillery unit, and this one can build your nukes, and as you can see, it can hover. So instead of building the strategic missile submarine, you can build a strategic missile experimental instead. That's pretty much it. We'll show you a bit more of the crawler in due time.
There is a lot of small details that you got to memorize about the Nomads.
Yeah.
My goodness.
We try to keep it down as much as possible though, because it is an unfamiliar faction, and while you want to balance game interestingness with
now, I just want to nitpick something here because I'm an asshole like that. I'm a-hole. The missiles aren't the same color as the icon. Yep. That upsets me.
The missiles? I mean, these guys are green.
The trail. Right.
Yeah.
Because you were pointing out earlier, the tanks fire the same color bullets.
No, they're not the same color. We actually are very careful with this color change effect. So it's only on the T1 Labs and a couple of other projectiles.
Gotcha.
And the most important unit, which you'll see in a minute. But aside from that, we try to keep it down fairly minimal because it can turn out to be fairly bad looking if everything is like laser
Too
Star
colorful.
Wars kind of
Yeah.
thing. So it's a subtle thing, and you could put it on any effect. Like we've got it,
Right.
we've written the code so you can put it anywhere. But then the question is, you know, did they stop to think whether they should? And we did, for once.
Yeah. We'll turn into a disco game, I guess.
Yeah. So then we've got our aircraft carrier. Unlike the other aircraft carriers, it's armed with T2 flak rather than T1 anti-air like the Cyber one or T3 SAMs like the other ones. Aside from that though, pretty standard. And yeah, there's your aircraft carrier. Got this deployment animation where it has 3 holes, but aside from that, nothing too special about it. There we go, that's the Navy done. And the moment you've all been waiting for, here's your experimentals. The Nomads have 3 experimentals, and you may be wondering, well, why are there 4 on the screen? Well, this is the bullfrog, and people are asking, why can't we build the bullfrog? And the answer is, we removed it from the game. Didn't really need it, and it became obsolete, but we decided to keep it inside the mod, so that if you want to have a mod maker or a map maker use the unit, it's fully functional and it just works. But it's not intended to be built, and you can't build it in normal games. Here's how it looks like, and it can hover and all the other stuff. But aside from that, this unit doesn't exist, so let's just teleport it into the naughty corner over there. Right, now the fun ones. So we've had a little bit of a sneak peek of the crawler, which is your mobile missile launcher. And we just get it to fire at something. It fires a massive volley of missiles. And basically these missiles have a large spread so that it doesn't lead its targets, but if the target moves it can still hit them. But it's not too precise, and that's basically all it does. You'll find that this is extremely useful because each missile does, let's say, I don't even know how much damage it does. It's got 600 DPS, so it's 12,000 damage a volley.
That's really cool that the, if you guys pay attention, they're firing outside sideways. It's cool.
Yeah, so you can see missiles unpacking as they come out of their missile pods as well. They won't be able to fit another one like that. And obviously it can build nukes. So if you have a crawler, you can have a surprise nuke on any map you like. And now for our favourite unit, so you can see that this is a new unit. This is the Beamer. It's the direct assault experimental for the Nomads.
Oh, look at those beautiful textures, guys. Beautiful.
So, and you can see it tilt its engines forward as it moves, and if you stop,
that is
upright.
amazing.
Let's spawn the new Beamer so you can see the spawning animation. Oh, here it is, checking its flaps and all that. And then it's ready to go. So, how does it fire? Cool. Well, it's very simple. Orbital beam of death, there we go.
Oh my god.
And it has a slight AoE effect on it, and a slight damage over time effect on it, so it just burns the ground. True to its name, this is what beamers do. Now, of course, we have to show this one off. So, let's just spawn another Beamer, but this time it's on Medicraze's team. And let's put it far away so nobody can hit it. And as you can see, the colour of the beam matches the faction. There we go. This is the most important feature in the whole mod. It makes your beamers immersive. So that. There we go. That's all it does.
That's all I want.
That's all I
wanted.
All we need. Right.
That's cool.
So, let's load this Beamer into the transport, because as you notice there's a massive transport hovering over ahead of us with its engines and beamer attachment animations, as you can see, grabs the beamer by its engine things, and, well, you have an experimental transport, which is transporting experimentals. Right, you get what you pay for. But, better yet, let's teleport it over here, next to the enemy beamer. And here we go. The beamer is firing.
No.
Yes, it's firing at the beamer from the transport. This, everyone,
And
is the most.
the enemy beamer is not able to fire back.
No.
Amazing.
Can't. And then you can see that the beamer tucks its little beaming head in after it's done. So you can see that the beamer is actually a symmetrical unit, so the underside of it is the same as the overside of it, and it was designed like this so that it could fit specifically on the T4 transport. And then the beaming head, it comes out of its bottom when it's on the transport, and out of its top when it's off the transport. So, there you go, that's your T4 transport. But, you've all been asking how much can it hold? So, how much do you think it can hold, Medicraze, and no cheating?
Oh man. Out of which units? Oh, for the beamer?
No. For like any units, T3 units. How many T3 units can it hold?
T3. Well, I'm gonna make my educated guess on the cost. How's that? Let me look up how much it costs. Because I really don't know. Oh god, where is it? There it is. So 28,000. 40 T1 units, I'm guessing.
Good guess.
I feel like I'm overballing it.
Oh, you think you are? So let's load up some T3 units to start with, right?
Okay.
So, how many T3 units has it got inside it? Let's look at this animation.
Oh Jesus Christ!
It's loaded.
That's
18 T3 units. 1-8. You can basically drop the biggest mass donation you want.
All right, well,
I mean, not mass donations.
Yeah, seriously, you definitely could. Yeah,
so,
for
18 times 4
health?
is 72 T1
70,000.
units. So you thought you were overballing it a little bit, but actually, we kind of got a little bit more.
Insane.
So let's spawn 72 labs.
That's 70,000 HP to get that beautiful gift while negating all the actual land. My god, that's just insane.
There you go. Look
and
at
how many labs do you have in there?
72 labs, and they can all fire from the transport.
No.
This is.
Oh man, you would have to have a really fun friend, because I'm assuming those are UEF labs. Nope, they're not. Oh my god.
They're Nomad labs, and you can notice that the Nomad labs attach upside down so that they can fire downwards at the enemy. There we go. They're called grasshoppers, by the way, and now maybe you can see why they're called grasshoppers.
Let me just get the action shot, the money shot here. God, I wish there was a way to get this camera to aim upwards. Just. Are the labs firing?
No, you need to.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Let me just get this.
Need to spawn something.
Here. Yeah. Let's get this guy. Oh god. Something they can't shoot back at it.
Okay, let's just move them in range because they have a very short range. But there we go. Rain of attack.
Wow. Just
one interesting problem with this.
40,000 HP.
One interesting problem with this is that the transport is so long.
I was just about to
not all the labs can reach.
Right. I was just about to mention, because only half of it was firing at. Oh no, I think I have activated developer mode somehow.
No worries, and of course, in case you're wondering, yes, it can hold the beamer as well at the same time.
No.
Yes.
Oh right, because it would have to affix to the center.
Yeah, no, it's all planned.
Oh god. How many beamers can you transport?
You can only transport one experimental at a time. But
Right.
if that
Also,
wasn't
I
enough,
accidentally hit. Yeah, go ahead.
that wasn't enough. Let us spawn a second transport over at the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's righted its engines, which are animated if you haven't noticed. And you can see
Yeah, no, I did.
you can
No.
see that it's actually
Oh my god.
picking up this whole battleship.
This
There
really makes the
we
transport worth it.
go. And it's 15k mass, so it's hefty price, but this is how the Nomads get their fourth experimental. If you load a beamer onto a transport, you pay about, let's say, how much is it?
It's 50k 15k? I thought it was. Oh,
Yeah,
when I was looking at the. That's actually pretty reasonable. 15,000 mass, given, at a certain point when you do
yeah.
contemplate
So
using.
for 43,000 mass, you actually get a experimental gunship with 70k HP on it,
Right.
which can also
Oh my
drop
god.
the beamer when it's getting low, so it's a pretty big
Right.
advantage.
Yeah, because
So
70,000 HP is nothing to scoff at. For
yeah,
those of you who don't know, like a Tsar is 40,000 HP plus whatever the shield is
I think
now.
it's a bit more than that, but the Soul Ripper is 90,000 HP.
Right, so it's very comparable. Now I'm just curious. I'm gonna spawn a T3 transport from UEF so we can get a interesting
This is the longest unit in the game,
idea
by the
here.
way. It's longer than the Tsar, because
I was
Yeah.
thinking just about that. Man, there it is.
we actually
Let me
had
disable
to
this
modify the exporter code in order to support the T4 transport, otherwise it just wouldn't work.
Right.
There we go, look at this little guy. Who's this? Is that T1? Continental
Man,
T1
just
check out.
even the gun on. Oh god, it just towers over it. It's like a freaking Star Wars destroyer. This
Yep.
is sick.
And it's
The
also got
textures
two
look great, by the
SAM
way.
launchers, which are full-on SAM launchers.
Right. Really, man. So you could even bring this into an air fight.
No, well, you
And
wouldn't
if
last
you're
long.
no, I know, but like at a distance, if you say are at a severe disadvantage for whatever freaking reason, and you're
Yeah,
fighting
yeah.
over your own base,
Well,
the
yeah.
the ASFs, if you don't have them prioritize other ASFs, it would soak up a little bit of that damage.
Yeah. I guess.
Well,
you
there's a
could.
bunch of strategic things you could do. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there we go. This is the T4 transport.
Yeah,
As you can
this
see,
is
this is
awesome.
the new model. So this is actually one of the reasons why we're going through the refactor with models, because before the old T4 transport, it used to have a different model, and it couldn't load 72 labs at once. Because the exporter
Right.
didn't support it, so we had to write new code for Blender and everything to make it work. And now this one has new weapons, it's got new functionality as well. So that's
Right.
what this needed a model replacement to
Now,
balance it as well.
have you thought about, for example, because I'm assuming for Nomads you want it to be easily adaptable but unique on their own. Have you thought about, say, the T2 Navy, the cruiser doesn't have a TMD? I could see new players getting frustrated with them thinking that their stuff is protected with TMD if they do create a cruiser and
Yep.
something of theirs gets killed. I realize this is growing pains, but say a veteran with 800 games or whatever, they're used to having that homogenous stuff. Each faction kind of behaves sort of the same.
Yeah, there
So
are things which
what?
are the same for the same factions, yeah.
Right. So what kind of brought you to the decision to exclude that from the cruiser and put it on the destroyer? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. So
Very
interestingly,
good.
this is a historical this is a historical thing. So
Right.
the previous team, you may know that Nomads has actually been around for longer than FAF has. So
Right.
this mod was in 2007, and it's gone through from hand to hand, from team to team, and we have at least the third team to work on this that we know of.
Right.
And this model we inherited with the TMD on it.
Oh,
So
okay,
we're
gotcha.
actually going to be swapping the TMD around a little bit.
Cool. All
We
right.
believe that the TMD boat will become the EMP boat, and then the cruiser will get rid of its. I don't remember if the cruiser will get the TMD or if the TMD will stay on the EMP boat, but it might be moving around a little bit. And with the discussed things on the T1 Navy, where the frigates will get a weak TMD, it should make Nomads pretty resilient overall.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Little history lesson for everybody here.
Now onto the structures. So, pretty standard stuff where the factories are concerned. Let's just build a few things out of them.
Now, before we even start, this is probably the best air staging I've ever seen.
Oh my goodness,
you may proceed.
You are gonna love it. It is the best air staging you'll ever see.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Here's our animations for the factories. Pretty standard stuff. Now, here's our T2 and T1 sonars, and somewhere over there we've got our T3 sonar. Let's just put it with its buddies over here. Pretty similar as far as they're concerned, and the radars, same thing. However, both the sonars and the radars have a special feature. So let's just turn off our intel, and you'll notice that there's a mysterious toggle over here. Well, what does it do?
I was just about to ask.
So let's turn it on. Ah, look at that, radar range has gone up. And if you check out the consumption of the T3's Omni array, it's now 8,000 energy per second. And if you turn it off, it's back to 2,000, which is the same as the other Omnis. So all of the Nomads radars have this radar boost button, which quadruples the drain on the radar, but it also gives them a boost to the intel, which you may find to be very useful in some cases. The exception to this is the T1 radar, which starts with it on, so the radar boost toggle is more like an energy saving mode, where it goes from 20 to 5 energy, and you can see it's got a very low range on it when it's in energy saving mode, eco-friendly and all that. And the same thing works on the sonars. So the sonars, T1 has an energy saving mode and the others have their boost, so you can actually, on smaller maps like 10 by 10, you might not need a T3 sonar nearly as much as you do normally. But yeah, for a hefty energy price you can actually boost your sonar and radar ranges quite significantly for that extra flexibility. Right, so defensive structures, all very standard. T1 anti-air, T2 flak, T3 SAM. There we go, nothing special about them. T1 PD, nothing special about it apart from how awesome it is with its Gatling cannon.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
We're actually planning on mounting that on the new model for the T1 frigate, because this clearly deserves to be seen more often. And a T2 PD, again, fairly standard stuff. It's a bit like the Aeon PD with a single powerful shot and a bit of AoE.
Right. And I know you were talking about changing a lot of the sounds, but I still find them super awesome because it's so punchy. It really sounds like...
Oh yeah, the sounds
it's like modern warfare, but future, you know?
Modern, better
Not
warfare.
Call of Duty, just modern warfare.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yep, and then we got the T2 static artillery, which works as you may expect. Very, very similar. The only special thing about it is it's got a little bit of damage over time, just like the Aeon artillery has. It's kind of thing like that. And then we have this thing. What's this? It's T3 rocket artillery, and it's got a hefty minimum range. But aside from that, here it goes. Or not. Oh,
I disabled the weapons.
Oh right, it's got the ground fire on. There you go.
Yeah.
Bamboozled. Now it's got to reload.
Shenanigans. Yeah, I was gonna see. While that's reloading, are the SAMs missile based or?
They're missile based. Yeah, they're actually like a silo as well. You'll be able to see SAMs fire.
Well, let me make all of the anti-air.
That's it, firing. There you go. Flip flop. can see, and it launches these missiles very high.
Right. Giving opportune
to dodge
time
up,
to dodge.
and then it just
so if you die from this,
shreks
that's
everything.
your fault. Yeah. Oh, I enjoy the way that it breaks apart before hitting, and it boosts its
it's
way.
like
That's really cool.
shaped charges or something like that. You
Exactly.
can make it up for yourself. Yeah, and
Yeah,
what this does is
really
it's
cool.
actually a better version of the T2 static artillery. So it's got the, I believe it's got the same range on it, and yeah, and all it does is it does more damage for more price. So there we go.
Which one does more damage for more price?
The T3 rocket artillery. So it's very.
Oh, okay.
It pretty much does the same thing. So it's a mix and match of what you want. And then mass extractors, standard. They've got the emergency repair system on them. So if you shoot them and they don't die after a minute or two, you get regen. So the way this works is all the structures that the Cyberans have regen on, so you may know that the Cyberans have regen on some of their structures, and the UEF have bonus HP on some of their structures. On every structure that the other factions have this special feature, the Nomads have this rapid repair system. So it's an alternative to the Cyberan regen. Rather, when they have it constantly, we have it after a minute or so. And
I'm just gonna do this right here, just so y'all can see the difference. Just trying to see the HP difference. There we go.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, let's get 10 ASF and let's put them into the air staging. So you'll notice, for some reason, they're not really going into the air staging. What are they all going over there for? Now they're trying to arrange themselves into a line. What are they doing there? That's weird, isn't it?
They look like a squid arm.
And look at this. They're all going inside the air staging. And they're not coming out. This, everyone, is a stationary aircraft carrier. Can't build them, but it can store up to 10 aircraft of any type. Right. Except transports, I guess. And
boy, that would.
That's where you stack your strats. Let me tell you. Right.
Yeah, that is a very good idea. But
of course,
boy,
the downside
would it be painful if someone sniped that.
That's exactly it. The downside is if somebody takes a snipe at your 500 HP thing, which contains 10 strats in it, you just lost 20 grand.
Yeah.
And it repairs them all at once while they're inside, and then it spits them all out like this.
Cool.
So, there we go.
That's awesome.
Nomads air staging is the best air staging.
It really is. It's almost like it's got its own cloak and everything.
Yeah.
And then this can be very brutal.
Speaking of cloaks, you'll notice that the shields have 2 different colors on them. What's going on there? So we got the T2 shield and we got the T3 shield, both of which can be upgraded into the T2 stealth shield and the T3 stealth shield. So they don't have a stealth generator, they've got stealth shields. Everything that's under the shield is also stealthed. How cool is that? And you can tell by the color of the shield if it's upgraded or not. You can't make a T2 stealth shield into a T3 stealth shield, so if you've got T2 thing, it's going to stay T2. If you've got T1 thing, or if you've got a T3 thing, it's going to stay T3, obviously. Interestingly, we're planning on changing that. We're going to make all shields stealth shields by default, and then we're going to remove one of the shields, so we'll have 3 shields in total rather than 4 like we have now. But for now, there we go, you have your upgradable stealth shields.
That's really cool.
Which look awesome. And then you have your T2 and T3 mass fabs, fairly standard stuff there. Then you have your TMD and your TML, so let's launch a missile from the TML first. you will notice that it launches a missile at an angle.
Yeah, very fast.
So while it's got an advantage of sniping things quickly at low range, you might want to be careful of cliffs. So don't put it too close to cliffs.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
Let's do...
grab a few TMD and put them over here. And let's turn on the intel so this missile can fire. And you can see that TMD take multiple shots to kill the missile. What's going on there? Well, the Nomads TMD is of course a little bit special, so it fires much quicker but at a very low damage, so it's got a kind of burst fire rate, and it ends up being the same but it's much more awesome. So what happens is if it deals some damage to a missile and then it's got another missile coming in, then it will actually switch mid-burst and fire on that one as well. So let's get 2 missiles. Oh no, they're too good. Need to get 3.
Oh my god. I just now found it. I've been scrolling around the map trying to find this.
No worries. But
yeah, this is good. Yeah, they seem to recharge really quickly.
Yeah, they have the same fire rate overall as the other factions.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly though, I may call this the I think this may win the prize for worst TMD actually.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, firing in a burst takes a bit more time than firing all at once. So while the other factions they fire one shot, this thing, while it has all sorts of clever things for controlling overkill in it, they don't actually fire a shot if it's being fired and all that stuff. It still takes a while, so they can be at a slight disadvantage in the other TMDs comparison. But they make up for it by being awesome. Alright, that's that. And let's see. Lastly, we've got our most important thing, which is the T3 artillery. So rather than having an artillery thing over here, you'll notice that it's got a satellite above it, and it fires in a burst and it basically shracks everything that's there. Very simple stuff. Pretty high damage and pretty straightforward.
So the only thing that bothers me is there's no as it turns its arm, so let's move it over this way. So it changes its arm direction, but the top of the satellite doesn't sway, you know? So what do we got in there? Do we have like some gimbals or something? Like this is supposed to be in space, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in space.
Where's the attention to detail? I'm very upset with you right now.
It's an old model. That's where the attention to detail is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, there's no oh, I called it I meant gyroscope when I meant.
Don't worry, it's got
said,
rocket
gimbal.
suspension. It's actually a stay tight if you think about it, because it's not in orbit around the planet, right? So it's got rocket things, and then you could use that for your you can use that for your rotation management.
Very good, very good.
Very good.
There's some lore to everything that's happening.
Yeah, totally right. And this thing gets adjacency bonus as well, just in case you're wondering. So
awesome. Good.
It's not any different from the other artillery other than being epic and having the advantage of having instant turn rate. So while other artilleries need time to turn their barrel, if they doesn't, it just shoots wherever you want.
And that when you're watching pros play, that really does come into play.
In fact,
you know, because
historical
really
patch to FAF was to enable rotation of buildings towards their enemy.
Right.
And that was to balance out the games where the top of the map had the advantage against the bottom of the map, because the artillery, when it was built at the same time,
it was always
top of the
aiming
map,
down. Yeah.
It could shoot downwards instantly, but at the bottom of the map you had to wait almost 30 seconds for it
20 to 30
around.
seconds, yeah.
I think it was 60
That is pretty brutal.
per second or something. Yeah, whereas Nomads, they're the best. And the disadvantage against this thing is that well, the firing in the burst is a disadvantage so much, but it has a slightly lower rate of arc, since it doesn't fire up and then down, it just fires across, so it can hit cliffs a bit more often. But aside from that, it's probably a very strong, well, not probably, definitely it is very strong.
It's pretty strong. Now I'm assuming it's very accurate, or does the accuracy taper off over time, over distance?
I don't really know
Kind of
how
like the
accurate
Scathers,
it
I
is
guess.
compared to other artillery,
seems-
but it does have your standard spread over
it
distance.
does deviate a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not as focused over a long period of time.
This,
Yeah.
given the speed of the artillery, this could almost be used defensively, because like think about the
it's
speed
got the
by
flexibility
which
to take out units as well. So while units
I
are
mean,
normally not
look
targeted,
at how fast it's hitting.
Yeah.
You
Alright,
can really
now,
damage an enemy army.
I think
Anyway.
that we've covered everything that Nomads have except the nuke,
Yep, for the
of
most
course.
part.
So let's finish up
I do love that.
with the nuke, and let's just nuke the middle of the map. So here we go. So strategic missile defense, standard, nuke, standard.
Is the smoke different? The smoke looks different.
No, that's pretty much the same. In fact, it's got the same
Really?
bug where it's offset from the missile. The other factions do.
I was.
And there we go.
I
Here
never noticed
comes
the
nuke. Get ready, because it sucks.
Look at the buildings
everything
going in.
There we go.
Now let's take a look at that reclaim.
In this case, there won't actually be any reclaim left,
Oh.
because it deals
that's too bad.
70k damage.
Right.
But let us put something that's got a lot of HP. So we can put this beamer over here, and we can watch them just crash the. Yeah, there you go. So they've got more than 35k HP. So let's launch second nuke. Of course.
Strategic launch detected.
Oops, looking at the wrong one. Yeah, I never noticed the distortion of the heat behind the missiles.
Yeah, no, this
You
is
know,
a,
the atmospheric refraction and everything.
yeah,
That's really cool.
standard effect, yeah. So let's
Yeah,
go.
never noticed it.
Questionable decision. Return to medicine and a mass donation have just been done. So, oh no, they have a death animation, and when you have a death animation,
Oh, they don't get pulled in.
they don't get pulled in, no. Because
Bug detected.
Bug. I'm not actually sure.
Add that
if
to
it's a
your
bug.
list of massive amount.
Massive
I'm sure.
failures, yeah. But in this case, they do leave the reclaim. So,
Yeah.
what actually? I wonder if there's a building which has loads of HP. Or does the Fat Boy die? No, the Fat Boy doesn't have enough HP. There has to be something that leaves nukes reclaim. Oh no, well it's the ACU explosion, doesn't it? Because the ACU does die with the nuke as well.
Megalith? Oh no, that has a death animation, doesn't it?
Yeah. Actually, what we could do is we can spawn a bunch of T2 units, then we can control K and ACU. Right? Now,
Commander under attack.
let's do that. All these guys getting sucked into the void. So, let's wait for the nuke to go off, and you can see there's reclaim left in the middle for where the tanks got killed, and this is the same amount of reclaim as you would from a normal ACU, and likewise it's the same amount of reclaim as you would get from a nuke if anything was to survive, so it'll be a megalith and other things like that.
No, I'm gonna kill this guy, see what he does. Aw. Oh, well, he's got his legs left. Nope, never mind.
Yeah. And then you have this little burning white ball, which is the super compacted mass, the reclaim.
So we got a little neutron star in the middle.
Yeah.
So for some reason it also ignores the physics where it would irradiate, I suppose. But why do the SACUs not leave reclaim? So if you look in the middle, I'm gonna control K1.
I believe
and,
ACUs
oh, this
don't.
one does. The SACU. There we go. Because I control K'd 1 earlier and it didn't leave anything.
Bug detected, perhaps? I don't know. Let's see.
Perhaps.
But yeah.
Yeah, we're figuring a bunch of stuff out. This is pretty
No,
cool.
always great to see bugs.
Yeah.
Although, maybe not.
The death animation is pretty hilarious on the SACUs. You see the top half just
yeah,
bouncing.
they do need a little bit of model replacement, somewhat urgently.
Just a little
perhaps.
tweaking.
So,
Yeah.
there we go. That is the faction. Hopefully, you've learned more than you ever need to know about Nomads.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let
This is
us
pretty cool.
end here today. There we go.
Well, thanks for showing us the Nomad faction. That's been Exotic Retard. He's pretty much in charge of what do you do, 3D modeling, texturing, new ideas, revamping, pretty much everything that needs revamping.
I do that which needs doing and no one else is there to do it.
Okay, so he's basically doing everything.
Yeah.
Is what we'll call it.
We need
He's
more
a helping
contributors.
hand in everything.
As you can see, there's
Right.
quite a lot of models which need replacing. So if you're good at modeling, if you're good at texturing, if you're good at drawing models, even if it's just on paper or on pen or whatever, that is actually the most important type of contribution we can have. Likewise, we need people who can do coding, making mods, and all that stuff. Pretty much everything. Check it out on the Nomads Discord. And with that, let's sign off.
Signing off. Thank you.